But PJ, 270 HP is bad. But PJ, 140 damage isn't relevant. But PJ, how do you deal with Lost Box? Well, I'll tell you how. On today's video, we're going to be talking about Glimmora EX, which I find to be an absolutely hilarious card and a great deck to play if you love playing casually on the ladder, or maybe even want to try to take this list, make it your own, and play competitively with it, because I do think that while some of the stats on these cards here are a little low and pretty low output, there's a lot of other cards that work with it in the meta to make these decks work, or this deck specifically. Now, not only are we playing something that limits your opponent's bench size down to 3, but it also poisons your opponent. Now, poison isn't necessarily relevant unless you're playing something to amp up the damage here, and that's why we're putting the Radiant Hisuian Sneasler in this list, and then we have the backup attacker and engine for Rapid Strike to put your Urshifu in and really just annihilate your opponent's bench and the active Pokemon. So I think that this deck is really cool, and there's a lot of interesting parts in the list that I've created for you today. We're going to take a look at what we put and why we put in the list, as well as some gameplay as always. So if you like this list, let us know down in the comments here. Before we get into the deck list and see what it's all about, here's a short message from our sponsors.
Be sure to check out all of the sponsors of the Shuffle Squad, whether you're looking for graded cards, you're looking for singles, sealed. We have all affiliate codes with all of our great sponsors, so be sure to check them out in the description below. Thank you so much for supporting us.
Okay, we're going to take a look at the full list here, and what we have to start out is a 3-1 line of the Glimmet. Now, the Glimmet is really cool because we have an Ascension Pokemon, and what I did here, because the Ascension Pokemon only has a really low hit point value of 40 hit points, I only put 3 here, just because if we have to set up multiple Glimmet on the bench, we really just don't want it sitting there as free prizes for something like Sableye to come and chew up. Now, I know that the next one on this list isn't the best as far as HP goes, but it does have a really cool attack for 1 fighting energy in the Iron Defense. Now, what this states in the attack for Iron Defense is that you get to flip a coin, and if heads, you get to be super annoying to your opponent. They cannot attack you with any damage. So that's pretty cool to do as you set up the rest of your board. So I do have the 3-1 split. Now, you could take this list and put 4 Ascension. There is a 70 HP Glimmet with a kind of mediocre attack that you can put in here too. Either way, but I like the 3-1 line, and I've been running it for a little while here. Now we have the Glimmora, so the part of the deck that you all came to see, the Glimmora EX, that has the Dust Field ability, limiting your opponent to a bench size of 3, which is really cool. And then it has its attack that does 140 damage and poisons your opponent's Pokemon. So that's really nice here when we pair it below with the Radiant Hisuian Sneasler, because we're doing 140 damage plus an extra 30 in between turns. So effectively, that becomes 170 going into your opponent's turn, and then coming back to you, we're hitting for basically 200 damage. So it's really nice, and the numbers add up over time when you're putting that poison effect into play. Now, we have only 3 of the Glimmora EXs, but I did put 1 of the other Glimmora EX, effectively referred to as the baby Glimmora. Now, this one has the Shattering Crystal ability that states when this Pokemon gets knocked out, you get to flip a coin, and if heads, your opponent doesn't take any prize cards. Again, being pretty annoying here is the name of the game with this deck. Now, the Poison Petals attack does damage your opponent by poison again, and puts 6 damage counters in between Pokemon Checkup. Now, adding an extra 2, you're doing 80 damage going into their turn, and then 80 more damage coming back into your turn, which is still a pretty efficient 160 damage. We're looking down the line here, and we see the Rapid Strike Urshifu combo, where we can ramp up the damage with the Gale Thrust, or also hit with G-Max Rapid Float, putting 120 damage twice on the board. Now, you can hit into either the active Pokemon or one of the bench Pokemon. Just watch out for Manaphy with this card. The ways that we have to draw cards to see what we need here are the Bibarel engine. Now this has been popularized in a lot of Arceus decks. I'm running a 2-2 line here. We'll stop and take a minute and talk about this, but I think it could go down to a 1-1 line where we've seen those in a lot of Palkia lists, specifically Shuffle Squad Palkia lists. And 2-2 is kind of overkill, but I really wanted that draw engine. There's not a whole lot of it for the Pokemon in this list, so I wanted to be more aggressive than anything else, and that's why I put the 2-2 line in here. Now, if you take this list and find that you can draw enough cards in the correct amount of time, you can take this down to a 1-1 list, and some of the cards I've been swapping out are Soul Rock combo that you can put Path to the Peak in this list that we'll talk about in a minute. And you could do funny things like that. Even Medicham V is another cool one if you wanted to bring down this Bibarel line. Moving into another engine of the deck, in the Rapid Strike engine, we do have a 2-2 Octillery line here as well. So with Octillery, you're able to search out all those Rapid Strike pieces, just like your Rapid Strike Energy, your Tower of Waters, to pivot out not only Octillery, Remoraid, and the Urshifus. You can also just get things like Korrina's Focus. So that's one of the supporters we'll talk about in a minute here. So I really like that Octillery line just to not only thin your deck possibly, but also find the pieces when you need them. Again, we're going to cover Radiant Hisuian Sneasler. Now this one never attacks, you're really just using it for an ability, but it only has 1 retreat cost. A lot of the Radiant Pokemon that we see that are pretty relevant have 2 retreat costs, like Radiant Alakazam in a deck like this, specifically a Rapid Strike deck, but this has the 1 retreat cost. We do have enough pivots around the board here that we'll touch on in a minute, but I think that this card is pretty well rounded. Now, looking at the supporter line, we're going to start out with the Boss's Orders. There are 4 in this deck. That might be a little overkill. You might only need 3 here, but I really wanted to focus this deck around getting the threats off the board, similar to how an Arceus style deck would play, whether it's Arc Umbreon or Arctina, where they're playing that higher count of Boss's Orders, and I wanted to stick with that theme here because I really think hitting with the relevant poison damage sets you up for a later on Urshifu attack. Looking at the draw support of this deck, we do have the 3 Professor's Research, which I find 3 is really good. That's a sweet spot for me here, is to get all of your cards in the discard pile that you might not need in your opening hand and digging, because we aren't playing Battle VIP Pass in this list, so we have to find the pieces when they matter. And usually it's on those opening turns, or maybe even after an Iono or Roxanne. Having 3 research in here is really good, and again, looking at the rest of the supporter line, we do have 3 Ionos. So now we have our disruption factor, not only on the board, but also by our supporters, limiting your opponent to a hand size based off of how many prize cards they still have left. So 3 Iono is also really good. It kind of reminds me of back in the day when we were playing a higher count of research and Marnie in a list. So I like this draw engine for sure. Now, in case we do get stuck or in a tight spot, again, we have the Korrina's Focus, where we can draw a hand up to 6 cards. So I think that Korrina's Focus is great when you do have that Rapid Strike engine inside the deck. You might as well just add that extra draw support. I do have 1 Raihan, and Raihan is really good because if your Pokemon are getting knocked out and you do have that higher energy cost, not only on the Glimmora EX, but also on the Urshifu, Raihan is really good here because it can just pull a piece out of nowhere from your deck and just have the comeback potential that you really need in a deck like this. When we're looking at the search cards here, we only have a 3 line of the Nest Ball and 4 line of the Ultra Ball, and I think that that's really all you need. Higher Ultra Ball count is here because you have the Bibarel engine, but I think 3 Nest Ball is also just fine. I don't think that you'll ever need more than the 3. We don't play Battle VIP Pass, and we do have quite a bit of basic Pokemon in the list. So finding your basic Pokemon really isn't a problem with this list, and there's so much draw support in it. I really don't think that you'd ever need more than 3 Nest Ball. If we're looking at some switching options that we were kind of touching on earlier in this conversation, is the Switch, Escape Rope, and Tower of Waters combo. So there's essentially 6 switching cards in the list, and having the 2 Rope and 2 Switch in this list is really good because sometimes when you have a 3 retreat cost Pokemon like Glimmora EX, you might want to get it out of the active. Or even the baby Glimmora is not the greatest in the active spot. Having your Bibarel up there with the 2 retreat is not great. So having the high count of switch, plus you can just Gale Thrust over and over again if you're able to set up both of your Urshifu VMAX in here. And I think that that's really good too. If somebody bumps your Tower of Waters per se, you want to have that option to go in here. Now, we do have one of the Forest Sealstone in the list here, and these could be one of the cards that maybe you can add more to if you're making other cuts in this list, but I think that the one of Forest Sealstone is just fine. We play a pretty low count of V Pokemon that this can actually attach to and be effective on, so I think the one is here just to find that extra piece that you need maybe to win the game. When we look over at the energy cards, we do play a high count of basic energy. Now, as you can notice, a lot of our Pokemon take double energy attachments to get their attack off, so finding that, especially when you need to use your Ascension attack and your Glimmet, is really key here. So we want to make sure that we're finding energy similar, again, to how the Arceus decks need that turn 1 attachment. Having that turn 1 attach here is really great and really good in a place where something like Glimmora needs to be evolved into as fast as humanly possible. So we have that, as well as a 3 count of Rapid Strike energy for the obvious reason of Urshifu. Now you can use this to Gale Thrust with or G-Max Rapid Flow. Either way is really good here, and then being able to search those out with Octillery is so good. I don't think we'd ever need the 4th one unless maybe you are going to go with that Medicham V play and you're discarding so many cards for some reason. Maybe you're using back-to-back researches. I really feel like you maybe even could go down to 2 here on the Rapid Strike energy if you want to add another card based off of just this Pokemon line alone. So that's pretty much it for the list. What we're going to do is we're going to hop over into some gameplay and see how this can compete against some of the more meta decks. All right, looks like we've got an opponent queued up. We're going to see what we're playing up against. Let's go with Tails because it never fails, right? That's what they say. And it did fail. Well, it's okay. We kind of want to go second anyway, I think. We want to use that Ascension attack, so that's perfectly fine. We're going to go in here. Okay, we double mulligan, and that works for me. Playing against Charizard 246. I wonder if they got a Charizard deck. Okay, so we do have the Ascension Glimmet, and that way, well, we don't have any energy cards in hand, so that's not the best, but it's okay. So playing against Chen Pao, so a meta deck. Okay. That's pretty good. We got their little Frigibacks down there. Okay, so we have an option. We can either go research and dig deep, or we can go Iono. They have 7 cards in their hand, so I feel like Iono is a better choice. We're going to get a Bidoof to set us up for a Bibarel. We want to keep that Rapid Strike energy too. Better chances of drawing into it. Even though we didn't check our prizes, that's fine. Okay, so we've got a second Glimmet. We can now Ascension because we have an energy card. Let's just get a second Bidoof. We have Bibarel in hand. Okay, so now we're going to limit their bench size already. Turn 1. So that was pretty good. Alright, cool. We've got a draw supporter. We've got a draw supporting Pokemon. They've got energy cards. Okay, cool. So they can draw more energy cards, and unless they have Rare Candy and Baxcalibur, we're sitting pretty right now. Okay, so they're only doing 60 damage, still not able to draw into what they want. And so then we can use Korrina for more cards. Okay, that's good. We got our energy card. We got something to evolve our Glimmet. Okay, now we can draw one more card, and it's a research. Honestly, I feel like we can just research, but we're just going to hit here, hold the hand. We don't need the professor's research just yet, so holding that was perfectly fine. So if you're learning how to play a little bit more, sometimes having a draw supporter card in your hand doesn't mean you have to play a draw supporter. What we did is we hit for 140, we did 30 damage in between turns because we have the Sneasler out, and now coming back into our turn, they're going to get knocked out. So they knock us out, that's okay. We can start setting up. They have no backup attacker, aside from, I guess if you count Baxcalibur, that is a backup attacker. So we're just going to load energy, and I think now we have to rip this research and just go right into it. See what we draw next. We need to see more attackers just in case. Okay, so we did get our Urshifu. That's good. We got our second Bibarel. We can even put our Remoraid down. That way we can find the other pieces to our Urshifu. And we can still draw cards. It's the best of both worlds here. We've got everything that we need. Let's hold that stadium just in case they put a stadium out. We're taking 2 prize cards. Their board state looks a little spooky. It's going okay. So now we've got the Frigibacks, the poor Frigibacks here. They only have 2 bench slots open, which is fantastic for us. Okay, there's the boss. They're going to open themselves up a little bit. Again, now we have everything that we need. Okay, cool. We're just going to put this up. Now we could go into the Remoraid, put the stadium down, but I really just want to limit them. I don't want that Urshifu in the active for the following turn. Even though, you know, if we had an energy attached, I'd say maybe. So let's just Iono them down to 4. And then we found our energy. We can still draw cards, but we're going to Rapid Strike Search first. Let's thin the deck a little bit more. I'd say let's just get rid of this boss. We play 4 boss total in the deck. That's perfectly fine. We're going to get... we don't need anything. Let's just draw 5 cards. 5 raw cards here sounds really good. And we got a Rapid Strike Energy for next turn. If we want to retreat, we're just knocking out their Energy Engine. So this is so good. This is such a funny deck to play. They really have nothing here. And we're just limiting them from doing pretty much anything they want to do. They have no Pidgeys. Okay, now they're opening their bench back up. That's pretty fine. We need to find some way to get the Bibarel out. So we should use Rapid Strike Search and thin our deck, and then we can rip the Research. Let's look at all of our cards. Now we should prize check. Okay, so we have a Switch and a Forest Seal Stone to find the Switch. At this point, we have 15 cards in your deck. I know you can't see it behind my head here, but we have 15 cards. So now we have 14 cards. So, okay, so we found the Switch. Perfectly fine. We're going to switch in and just Gale Thrust their poor Frigibacks. And that's it. That's the game. All right, cool. So we made it work. And that was it. The deck list in all its glory was able to perform against Chien-Pao EX, which is pretty much one of the higher performing decks going into the new Obsidian Flames meta. We were able to accomplish our goal of limiting our opponent's bench. We were able to knock out those big, scary Pokemon that can really one-shot us most of the time and just overcome them from making their gameplay last more than I think and I wanted it to last, and still winning the game. So I think that we put enough pressure on our opponent here with this game, and we showed what Glimmora EX can actually do. So I think that using this deck, again, is a super fun deck. Is it competitive with this list? Let me know down in the comments. If you have any suggestions on the list, or maybe some decks that we can cover here on the channel in the future, definitely leave that down below. From here on out, we're going to sign off for this video. I'm PJ from the Shuffle Squad, and we'll catch you next time.
You made it to the end. Thank you so much for watching this entire video from the Shuffle Squad. Honestly, from the bottom of our hearts, we appreciate each and every person that supports our content, watches what we have going on every single day, every single week, even from time to time, and continuously allows us to have a forum to project our creative content towards the Pokemon TCG community. So if you haven't already, be sure to give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and even leave a comment to help boost the YouTube algorithm. That being said, we'll catch you with our next video. Thanks again. Take it easy.